Ever feel like you're carrying around an emotional weight, anger, bitterness, or resentment that just won't let go? We all have some kind of pain that we think defines us. But here's the truth. Jesus teaches us that real peace comes when we let go. In a world where we're told to hold on tight to our emotions, letting go isn't weakness, it's the key to finding real joy and peace. In this video, we're diving deep into how choosing to let go can set you free from the past and open the door to a brighter, more fulfilling future. Stick with me until the end, and I'll show you how releasing what holds you back can completely transform your life. Take a moment and think about your life. What do you carry with you every day? I'm not talking about the physical stuff, the phone, the keys, or even your wallet. I'm talking about the emotional baggage you've accumulated over the years. The anger towards someone who hurt you, or resentment you hold for a situation you couldn't control, or the fear of being vulnerable because you've been let down in the past. Personal insight. For years, I carried resentment towards someone who deeply wronged me. Every time I thought about it, that anger would rise in my chest like a storm cloud ready to burst. I convinced myself that holding on to my feelings was a sign of strength, that I was standing my ground. But in reality, that resentment wasn't making me strong. It was keeping me stuck. It was like carrying around a heavy bag day after day. The more I carried it, the heavier it got. I remember at one point feeling like I was drowning in this weight. Every thought about the past added more pressure, and I couldn't understand why I felt so drained, emotionally and mentally. It felt like I was fighting an invisible battle every day. But then something shifted. As I started to reflect on it, I realized something that changed my life. Holding on to resentment wasn't hurting the person who wronged me. It was hurting me. It was stealing my peace. No matter how much I tried to move forward, I couldn't while carrying that weight. The anger, the pain, the frustration, they were all robbing me of my own joy, my own peace of mind. And for what? To prove a point? To hold on to a past I couldn't change? It hit me. By refusing to let go, I was only letting that past control my present. And the worst part, the more I held on, the more it affected my future. I was carrying around a piece of my past that was holding me back from the person I wanted to be, from the life I wanted to live. Real life story. I think we've all experienced this, haven't we? Whether it's someone close to us or a situation that didn't go the way we planned, we often think that holding on to the pain is somehow making us stronger. It's not. There was a friend of mine who for years couldn't forgive her father for abandoning her when she was a child. She believed that holding on to that hurt kept her safe, that she'd never let anyone get that close to her again. But as she held on, it started to affect everything. Her relationships, her happiness, even her health. It wasn't until she made the decision to let go, to forgive, not for him, but for herself, that she started to feel lighter. It didn't change the past, but it changed how she carried it. The true cost of carrying baggage. What many of us don't realize is that carrying all this emotional baggage comes at a huge cost. It's like dragging around a suitcase that's so full of broken dreams, hurt feelings, and unresolved issues that it weighs us down every step we take. We don't even realize how heavy it is until we try to move forward. We wonder why we feel exhausted, stuck, or constantly on edge. It's because we're carrying around all this unnecessary weight. Think about it. Every time you hold on to anger, resentment, or past disappointments, you are creating emotional clutter in your life. And just like physical clutter in your home, Emotional clutter makes it impossible to move freely or focus on what really matters. The more you hold on, the more it piles up. And here's the thing, by holding on to these negative emotions, you're giving them control over your life. They dictate your actions, your mood, even your future. It's a chain reaction. The more you let them build up, the harder it becomes to let go. And when you try to move forward, you realize you're still tethered to the past. The road to freedom, I can tell you from experience, letting go isn't easy, but it's the only way to move forward. You have to recognize that you deserve peace, you deserve joy, and you deserve a life free from the heavy burden of past hurts. The moment I made the decision to let go of my resentment, I felt like I could finally breathe again. That heavy weight I had carried for so long started to lift. And with it, a new sense of freedom emerged. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting what happened. It doesn't mean you have to let the person who hurt you off the hook. It means you're choosing to free yourself from the grip of those old wounds. You're deciding that your peace is more important than holding on to the pain. The power of letting go. Letting go isn't a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. It's the strength to release the things that are holding you back. It's the strength to move forward, even when it feels like your past is weighing you down. And it's the strength to choose happiness and peace over bitterness and anger. So ask yourself, what are you carrying today? What emotional baggage have you been dragging around that's making your journey harder than it needs to be? What would it feel like to finally let go? The truth is, when you free yourself from the past, you create room for the future. Room for growth, room for healing, and room for joy. Holding on to negative emotions can consume us. We don't always realize it. But resentment, pride, greed, and anger can weigh us down in ways that affect our mental, emotional, and even physical health. Think about it. How much of your energy is drained by holding on to anger or past hurts? How much does it rob you of the joy and peace you deserve? When you hold on to negative feelings, they become like invisible weights, pulling you down in every aspect of your life. Imagine you're walking through life with a heavy backpack filled with anger, resentment, or fear. Every step you take becomes harder and harder. The longer you carry that weight, the more exhausting it becomes. At first, it might seem like you can handle it, but over time, you realize it's getting harder to move forward. It feels like you're walking in circles, constantly weighed down by something you just can't shake off. Personal insight, I've been there myself. I once held on to anger for years. It was as though I was carrying a heavy bag on my back, filled with unresolved issues and hurt feelings. Every time I thought about the source of my anger, I could feel my chest tighten, my thoughts cloud over, and my spirit feel heavy. I thought I was strong for holding on. I thought it was a sign of resilience to keep my guard up and not forgive. But in reality, it wasn't making me stronger. It was making me more exhausted, more emotionally drained, and more disconnected from the peace I was seeking. The more I held on to my anger, the more it controlled me. I started noticing how it affected my relationships, my productivity, and even my health. I couldn't concentrate on anything because my mind was always clouded by those feelings. My emotional energy was constantly being drained by this unresolved resentment, and I had nothing left for the positive things in my life. Real life story. I once knew a woman who, for years, held a deep grudge against her ex-husband. Their divorce had been incredibly painful for her, and she couldn't forgive him for what she perceived as betrayal. Every time she saw him or thought about him, Her heart would race with anger and resentment. She would relive the hurt over and over, and it consumed her. It wasn't until she realized just how much this grudge was affecting her health that she decided to let it go. Her stress levels were through the roof. She was suffering from constant headaches, and she was even struggling to sleep at night. One day, after a long conversation with a close friend, she decided to make a change. She chose to forgive him, not for his sake, but for hers. She realized that the anger she held on to wasn't punishing him. It was only punishing her. By forgiving him, she gave herself permission to heal. She let go of the weight that had been holding her back for so long, and in doing so, she found a deep peace she had never experienced before. It didn't happen overnight, but the more she worked on letting go of that resentment, the more lightness and joy began to fill her life. The real cost of holding on. This story isn't unique. Many of us go through something similar. Whether it's resentment toward a person, a situation, or even ourselves, we often hold on to negative emotions because we think they define us. We think that by holding on, we're protecting ourselves. But in reality, we're only limiting our ability to move forward. When you refuse to let go of resentment, pride, or greed, it starts to drain your life force. It's like carrying a heavy burden you don't need to carry. You start to lose your energy, your joy, and your peace. Every part of your life, your relationships, your work, your mental and physical health, becomes affected by the emotional weight you're carrying. Personal commentary. I can't stress enough how much letting go is about freeing yourself. When you choose to forgive or release that emotional burden, you take back your power. You stop allowing the past to dictate your present. You stop letting it control your emotions and your future. The decision to let go isn't just for the other person. It's for you. You deserve the peace that comes with letting go. You deserve the freedom that comes when you stop carrying that emotional baggage. Final thought. The cost of holding on is far too high. It's a slow drain on your emotional health, your relationships, and your well-being. You don't have to carry that weight anymore. Letting go isn't just about forgiveness. It's about choosing to release yourself from the chains of past hurts and embracing the freedom of living in the present. It's a powerful choice, and it's one that can transform your life. When we let go of the things that weigh us down, we create space for peace and joy to enter our lives. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting or excusing what happened. It means freeing ourselves from the emotional burden. It's about consciously deciding that you will no longer allow something or someone to control your inner peace. Think of it this way. Holding on to resentment or anger is like carrying a heavy backpack filled with rocks. Every step you take is harder, and the more you carry, the more exhausting life becomes. But when you choose to let go, it's as if you've set that backpack down. You no longer have to carry the weight of the past, and with that comes a sense of relief, clarity, and freedom. Personal insight. I remember the exact moment when I decided to let go of my resentment. It wasn't easy. In fact, it was one of the hardest decisions I've ever had to make. For years, I'd been holding on to this deep anger towards someone who had wronged me, and I convinced myself that holding on to it was my way of protecting myself. But I finally realized something. The only person I was hurting was myself. Letting go wasn't an instant fix. It took time. I had to confront uncomfortable emotions, anger, pain, fear, and I had to be honest with myself about how much these emotions were controlling me. But once I made the conscious decision to release that anger, something amazing happened. It was as if a weight had been lifted from my shoulders, and I could finally breathe freely again. For the first time in a long time, I felt lighter, more at peace. I realized that by holding on to that anger for so long, I was giving away my peace to someone who didn't even deserve it. I was letting them control my happiness, even though they weren't even in my life anymore. And I wasn't just giving away peace, I was blocking joy from entering my life. The real power of letting go. Letting go isn't just about the other person. It's about reclaiming your own peace. The moment I let go, my life started to change in ways I never expected. I could think more clearly without the constant cloud of resentment hanging over me. I could make better decisions because my mind wasn't consumed by anger. I could enjoy the present moment because I wasn't always living in the past. It's as if by releasing the emotional baggage, I cleared the path for joy, gratitude, and love to enter. I wasn't carrying around that heavy load anymore, and in return, my life felt lighter and brighter. It was no longer a life ruled by past hurts. Instead, it became a life filled with hope and possibility. Real life story. I once knew a man who had been carrying a grudge against his father for most of his adult life. His father had been absent and distant when he was a child, and this hurt had shaped his entire adulthood. He struggled in his relationships, at work, and with his own sense of self-worth. For years, he believed that if he held on to the anger, it would somehow protect him from being hurt again. But one day he decided that enough was enough. He chose to forgive his father, not for his father's sake, but for his own. The moment he made that decision, he described feeling like a burden had been lifted off his chest. He no longer felt weighed down by bitterness or resentment. Slowly, he began to rebuild his relationship with his father, and more importantly, he began to rebuild himself. He found a new sense of peace, and with it came a newfound energy. His life, which had once been overshadowed by the past, now felt full of hope and new possibilities. Personal insight. Letting go of the emotional baggage you carry is one of the most liberating things you can do. It's not about excusing what happened or forgetting the pain, but it's about choosing to no longer let it control your life. It's about saying, I deserve peace, I deserve joy, and I will not let this hurt define me anymore. This shift is profound. When you release that weight, you create space for growth, healing, and happiness. And in the end, letting go isn't just about the other person. It's about you taking back your life, your happiness, and your inner peace. The key to freedom. The real power of letting go lies in how it frees you from the past. It gives you the opportunity to live fully in the present moment, unburdened by old wounds. It doesn't mean you forget, but it means you stop letting the past dictate how you live today. It allows you to step into the future with a lighter heart and a clearer mind. Final thought. Letting go doesn't just lighten your emotional load. It transforms your entire life. By releasing what no longer serves you, whether it's anger, regret, or fear, you open up the space for everything that truly matters. Peace, joy, love, and possibility are waiting for you. But first, you have to let go. Here's a simple analogy to help illustrate the concept of letting go. Imagine your soul is like a balloon. A balloon is light, free, and full of potential. It floats effortlessly, soaring through the air, unrestricted by anything but the gentle pull of the wind. It represents the lightness and freedom that we all naturally crave. The space where our spirits feel unburdened and open to life's possibilities. But what happens when you start attaching weights to the balloon? Each weight represents a negative emotion, resentment, fear, pride, anger, or past hurts. The more weights you add, the heavier the balloon becomes. It no longer rises freely into the sky. Instead, it begins to struggle, its upward movement slowed and limited. The balloon is now trapped, unable to soar as it once did. It's weighed down by the burdens we carry. Now picture yourself cutting the string that's holding the balloon down, releasing the weight that's been dragging it to the ground. What happens? The balloon floats up again, light and free. With nothing to hold it back, it can rise higher than before, soaring freely into the sky. In the same way, when we let go of the emotional weights we carry, our souls are able to rise to new heights. We become lighter, freer, and more capable of living the life we are meant to live. Personal commentary. The process of letting go is one of the most liberating experiences you can have. It's not just about releasing a grudge or negative emotions. It's about freeing yourself from the invisible chains that bind you to the past. These chains don't just affect your present. They limit your potential and keep you stuck in old patterns. Letting go is not a sign of weakness. It's actually a courageous act of self-love and empowerment. We often think that holding on to our emotions, whether it's resentment, anger, or fear, gives us control, but in reality, it's the opposite. Holding on to them keeps us tethered to the past, and the weight of those emotions keeps us from fully experiencing the present and reaching for the future. Letting go requires bravery. It requires the courage to face the emotions that have been holding you back and to choose freedom over fear. When I let go of my own anger and resentment, I realized that I was allowing my soul to float once again, free from the weight that had been holding me down for so long. It wasn't an easy decision, but once I made it, I felt a sense of lightness I hadn't felt in years. The power of releasing the weight. Just like the balloon, your soul has the power to rise to greater heights when it's no longer weighed down by negative emotions. Letting go is about creating space for growth, joy, and peace in your life. When you cut the strings that tie you to your past, whether that's a hurt, a grudge, or a fear, you allow yourself the freedom to live fully without being held back by what's already happened. You give yourself the gift of possibility, the chance to soar higher and reach the heights you were always meant to achieve. Real life example. I remember working with a client who was struggling with guilt and regret over a past mistake. She carried this emotional weight for years, believing that holding on to it was her punishment for what she had done. She thought that by feeling guilty, she was somehow atoning for her actions. But it wasn't until she realized that holding on to the guilt was preventing her from moving forward, and that forgiveness was the only way she could truly heal, that she was able to begin letting go. When she made the decision to forgive herself and release the guilt, she felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted. It wasn't just the guilt she let go of. It was the belief that she wasn't worthy of happiness or peace. Once she released the weight of the past, she began to see new possibilities for her future. And she started to live with a freedom she hadn't felt in years. Final thought. Letting go is the act of setting your soul free. It's the release of all the emotional weights that have kept you from rising to your full potential. When you decide to cut the string and release the weight, you give yourself the opportunity to soar higher than you ever thought possible. You stop letting your past define you and allow yourself the freedom to embrace the present and future with open arms. The first step in letting go is acknowledging the emotions you've been holding on to. This is often the hardest part because it requires complete honesty with yourself. For many of us, it's much easier to push aside uncomfortable feelings or ignore them. But in order to truly move forward, you have to first recognize what you've been carrying. Whether it's anger, fear, regret, or something else entirely, facing those emotions head on is the key to releasing them. Think of it like cleaning out your closet. You can't get rid of things you don't acknowledge are there. The same goes for emotional baggage. You need to first admit that it's there, sitting in your heart or mind before you can let it go. Once you've identified what you're holding on to, it's time to take action. Recognizing the burden is only the beginning. The next step is to actively choose to release it. And for many, that first action is forgiveness. Personal insight. Forgiveness doesn't mean you condone what someone has done to you. It doesn't mean you erase the wrongs they've committed. Forgiveness is about releasing the hold those actions have over you. It's about choosing peace over pain. It's about giving yourself the freedom to move on without letting that hurt keep you trapped in the past. I used to think forgiveness was something I gave to the person who hurt me. But I quickly learned that forgiveness is something I give to myself. The moment I forgave, I wasn't letting the other person off the hook. I was setting myself free from the burden of holding on to that anger. The process of forgiving. Forgiving doesn't always happen in one moment, and it's certainly not an easy or quick fix. It's a process. For some, it takes time, reflection, and the courage to face the pain. But each step you take toward forgiveness is a step toward freedom. You don't have to do it all at once, but you do have to start somewhere. And the decision to forgive, no matter how difficult it may be, is an act of reclaiming your power. It's not about excusing the hurt, it's about choosing peace over the weight of resentment. Real life example, I had a close friend who was struggling with an abusive relationship. For years, she carried the weight of shame and guilt, believing that it was her fault for staying in that relationship as long as she did. She internalized the pain and allowed it to consume her, believing she deserved it. She couldn't forgive herself for allowing the abuse to happen. But one day, after a long conversation, she decided to begin the process of forgiving herself. It wasn't easy. It took time for her to truly understand that the mistakes of the past didn't define her and that she deserved to heal. Slowly, she began to release the shame and guilt that had been holding her back for so long. The more she forgave herself, the more she felt a sense of freedom. It was as if the chains that had been wrapped around her heart for years had loosened. The act of forgiving herself opened the door to a healthier future, one where she could finally embrace a life free of shame, guilt, and regret. The power of self-forgiveness. Forgiving yourself is one of the most powerful steps you can take on the road to healing. It allows you to break free from the emotional prison you've created, to stop blaming yourself for things outside your control, and to let go of the unnecessary weight that has been dragging you down. You may not always understand the full scope of why things happened the way they did, but choosing to forgive yourself is choosing to stop being defined by those past experiences. Why letting go is a journey. The road to letting go is not a straight line, nor is it always an easy one. It's a journey, one that requires patience, compassion for yourself, and the understanding that healing is a process. There will be ups and downs. Sometimes letting go may feel like 2 steps forward and 1 step back, but the important thing is that you continue to choose healing. And each time you forgive, each time you let go, you move 1 step closer to freedom. Letting go is not just about releasing negative emotions. It's about making the conscious choice to live a life that is no longer controlled by past pain. It's about embracing peace, joy, and growth, and knowing that the future holds endless possibilities when you're free from the weight of the past. The most profound change comes when we realize that letting go doesn't make us weaker, it makes us stronger. For so long we've been conditioned to believe that holding on to our emotions, whether it's anger, regret, or fear, is a sign of strength. We think that by holding tight to these emotions, we're somehow protecting ourselves. But in reality, it's the opposite. Letting go is the ultimate act of empowerment. It's taking control of your emotions, your heart, and your future. When we choose to let go, we release the emotional baggage that holds us back. We create space in our hearts for things that truly matter: love, healing, and growth. By letting go, we make room for peace to enter our lives. We no longer allow the past to control our present, and we begin to live a life of freedom, unburdened by the weight of past hurts. Personal insight: I remember the exact moment when I truly realized the power of letting go. For years, I had held on to so many emotions: anger, resentment, and a deep sense of betrayal. I thought by holding on to these feelings, I was protecting myself from being hurt again. But what I didn't realize was that by holding on to those feelings, I was only hurting myself. When I finally made the decision to let go, I didn't feel weaker, I felt stronger. There was a sense of freedom, a sense of reclaiming control over my life. I was no longer allowing the past to dictate how I felt in the present. I had freed myself from the grip of those old wounds, and I could finally start to heal. Letting go was the key to transforming my life. It wasn't about forgetting or excusing the hurt. It was about reclaiming my peace and giving myself the permission to heal, to move forward, and to grow. The true power of letting go. Letting go isn't a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. It's the strength to face your emotions head on, acknowledge your pain, and make the conscious decision to release it. When you let go, you stop giving power to the past. You stop letting it control your thoughts, your actions, and your heart. Instead, you take back that power and use it to create the life you deserve. It's like standing at the edge of a cliff and realizing that all the weight you've been carrying is no longer necessary. You don't have to carry it with you any longer. You can step forward into freedom. That's what true strength looks like. Final thought: letting go doesn't mean you'll forget the hurt or the wrongs that were done to you. It doesn't mean you're pretending it didn't happen or that you're excusing the pain caused. Letting go means you've made a conscious decision to release the grip that those things have on your heart. It means you've decided that your peace is more important than holding on to the past. It's about reclaiming your inner peace, your happiness, and your future. It's about giving yourself permission to heal. You may never fully forget the hurt, but you don't have to carry it with you anymore. Letting go is about choosing to no longer let those past wounds define your present and your future. It's about stepping into a new chapter of your life where you are free to grow, to love, and to live without the weight of the past holding you back. The key takeaway from this lesson is simple. To experience true peace and freedom, you must let go of the emotional baggage that weighs you down. Holding on to resentment, fear, or past wounds may feel like you're protecting yourself, but in reality, it's only keeping you stuck. Letting go isn't just a way to release pain. It's a way to embrace a future full of peace, love, and growth. By choosing to release the emotional burdens that have been holding you back, You create space for a life that is lighter, freer, and more fulfilling. Letting go allows you to open your heart to new possibilities, new joys, and new experiences. It's not about forgetting or excusing what happened, but it's about choosing to live without the weight of the past defining your present and future. You have the power to free yourself from the emotional chains that have kept you from experiencing life to the fullest. When you let go, you make room for peace, healing, and growth, and ultimately for a future that is filled with love and possibility. The best is yet to come, but first you must release the things that are holding you back.